Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome to the first Hangout on Air for the Computer Science Principles for High School in 2015. So I have a few initial announcements I'd like to make, and then we'll introduce our guest speaker. Um, so the quizzes are up, and some of you are filling out the quizzes okay and getting multiple emails. We're working on that. And if you do not put your email address in your quiz, we cannot send you the email with the answers, and we also can't track that for certificate purposes. So please make sure you put your email address in there. And also, Tony will go over in just a moment this process, but we'd like to make sure that if it's an email just to the staff, there's a way in Piazza to post just to instructors. So Tony will talk about that. That's really helpful so that a lot of the posts that are going out just for your personal questions aren't being seen by the whole group. So if you're watching this live, what we'd like you to do is go to Piazza, and in the top left, there's an initial post. I think it's like the second one down in my view. And let me see. It says guest speaker today and mentions Tuesday, June 2nd at 4 p.m. And gives some introduction to Tony. If you'll use that thread in Piazza to actually post your questions, we're then going to move those over, and Tony will be able to respond. He'll be able to see them here in the chat that we're using for this Google Hangout. So we will archive this, and it'll be up on YouTube, and we'll mention that also to those who weren't able to join us today. So what live means here is most of you will be seeing this on YouTube, and it's a 1-minute delay. So we're a little bit ahead. So your questions may come to us, and we'll address them as we can. What live means also is we can't put 100 people or more onto a Google Hangout. The Google Hangout on Air still has only a limitation of 10 people who are actually speaking and answering questions live. But you can watch it live as a stream. You can also post questions, and we'll bring those in. So live doesn't mean we have 100 people on here all with our faces showing. It just means that you can watch the video live and post questions. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Tony, and he will take it off with some introduction, and then you can have questions for him. So Tony Luckett is with Piazza, and I think I had my first email from Tony earlier in the year about SIGC and some meetings there, and he graciously offered to come on and give a little bit of a help in a tutorial session on how to use Piazza. So many of you are seeing like an overwhelming number of posts coming in, so ways to manage that, ways to best view and navigate, and some other tricks of the trade in using Piazza. So welcome, Tony, and if you would, please go ahead and take over and tell us how to best use Piazza.
Sure. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Tony. I grew up in New York City, and then went to college, did mechanical engineering, skipped the country for a few years, and ran a school in the Republic of the Marshall Islands before teaching high school math in Boston. Went to graduate school, and that's where I met our founder, Pooja, and began, following what Piazza was doing, and wound up getting involved a couple years ago. My role with the organization right now is I head up all of our university partnerships and instructor education. And so I'm excited that you have me here, and I'll do what I can to answer all of your questions, show you some of the tricks of the trade. And if there's any lingering questions, as Jeff said, please post them in the Piazza, and I'll get to them eventually, or someone from my team will. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a screen share so you can see how I'm using Piazza. And what I'll do is I'm going to start with just by offering up a couple of resources. So I know many of you who may be new to Piazza, unfamiliar with how to use it, feel free to go to support.piazza.com. For instructors, everything you'd want to know how to do to get started, how to manage your class, how to use Q&A in terms of posting a note, what your course page is like, and your account and email settings. And then for those of you who are students, very similar information on how to use Piazza. So I'd encourage you to take a look at this site, and then again, if there's any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll quickly walk through some of the best practices, and again, I think this is mainly for instructors of Piazza, but as students and as participants in a large class like this, it may be good to give you some additional context for how we speak to instructors and what we recommend that they do. And so again, before introducing Piazza to your class, we really encourage instructors to talk about what the culture is going to be like. Will you allow anonymity? What sort of incentives, if any, will you give for participation? What are your expectations for support in terms of your TAs, your graders, and even your students? And then how, will you customize folders to reflect what's going on in the class? And I'll get to that in a bit when I show you how to tag your posts, and that just helps in a class, again, of this size, really helps you navigate things a little quickly. So getting your class started, I mean, we're already started. Maybe something like this as a live demo is one way to drum up some interest. But we encourage instructors to be creative as well, because what we found is our students on average use Piazza between 2 and 3 hours a night. And they do so mainly because they know that Piazza is a place where they can get help quickly, they can get help from their peers, and so they find this as a really good source for answering those questions. So I'm going to jump in here. I know there was a couple of questions around email settings, sending emails, around search, around and the at being around tagging, and then how to make a private post to your instructor. So I'll address those first, and then I'll pause for questions. So feel free to type your questions in, and hopefully Jonathan will be able to get me those questions as they come up. So I guess first and foremost, what I'll show you is your settings. So you go over here to the top right, and you click on your settings button, and I'll go to my email and account settings. This is the place. As soon as it goes, you have to pardon me. I'm in a hotel in Anaheim, and the internet connection has been somewhat slow. But here's where I would adjust my settings. And so if I did have a preferred email, I know that many of you may be using a ua.edu email, or you may be using something else. You can put your preferred email here, and this will basically, when you get an update from Piazza, we'll send it to this email address. You can add in your other email addresses here as well. So what I'm going to do is, by class, I can determine whether or not I want to get a real-time update, or I want to change these update notifications. And so one of the things that we encourage is, if you are asking lots of questions, Piazza is going to let you know when your question's been answered. But let's say you're not a person who's asking lots of questions, and you want to check every couple of hours. So what I can do is I can edit my email notifications. For new questions or notes, I can determine whether I want the updates in real time, no emails, daily digest, or a smart digest, and then you can choose how many hours, up to 6 hours. For updates to questions that you follow, you can get it in real time. You can say no email, or you can just have it off. I would just save my settings, and that would change the email settings for this particular class. So if your class, which is the CSP4HS, is not your only class on Piazza, you're going to want to make sure that you adjust this accordingly to which classes that you have. So that's your email settings. I'm going to go back to Q&A and talk to you about how you can privately message your instructor. And so I'm enrolled here as an instructor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my CS Principles for HS, and I'm going to create a new post. And let's say it's a question that I have, but it's a private question. I'm going to go ahead and make sure it goes to this instructor, and I'm going to have this go to Professor Gray. And this is actually an other question, and this is top secret inquiry. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck? And I'm going to post my question. Now, when I do that, this red question mark lets me know that it's a private question, and it's only gone to Professor Gray. And so if you do have some sensitive question, maybe it's a question about grades, maybe there was something that happened in class, and it only requires his attention, then you're going to want to go ahead and send him that private message. I can go ahead and search. Let's say I had a question about the first homework assignment. So what I would do is I can go into my search bar, and when I click in homework, let's see if Piazza is going to look, and all the question, anywhere that homework appears in this thread, is going to pop up over here in the search. And so this is just a quick way for me to find, maybe I remember a particular phrase that was used in class. Maybe it was about an algorithm. Maybe it was about recursion. You can type those things in here, and we encourage, before you make a post, to use the search function, because chances are somebody may have already asked that question. Okay. Another way to quickly navigate your question feed would be to click on one of these folders. So if I look at, oh, I want to see the posts around unit lessons. When I click on unit lessons, now my entire question feed is filtered by unit lessons, and it'll tell you right here, filtered by unit lessons. So if I want to clear that filter, I just click on the X, and then that filter is cleared. Now, as a student, you don't have any control over what these folders are, but you're required to make sure that when you're posting, what you post goes into one of these folders. And they really just act like tags. And so if you do have suggestions for other folders because you know that there are going to be questions around a particular topic, I'd really encourage you to talk to Jeff or talk to Jonathan and see if they can get those folders made in there for you. So I've covered settings, I've covered privately posting to the professor, and I've covered search. What I'm going to show you now is one more thing. So let's say this is a question for the class. Actually, let me cancel out of here. So guest speaker calendar. When I click into guest speaker calendar, this looks like it was a note. 224 people have viewed it. Great. But this is note 16. Okay, so note 16, every post on Piazza has a number associated with it, and that's going to be up here in the URL, and you'll see the CID is some number. So now I know the guest speaker calendar is here. So now that I know this is post 16, let's say I had a question about, or I wanted to share with my my classmates about a new guest speaker, and I might say, are we going to have another guest speaker? And this is for a guest speaker, so I'm going to click that. I saw something in @16 which shows a calendar, but I wanted to know if we will have others. Can you please advise? So I'm going to post this as myself. Let's say I was a little shy to ask the question. I might just post anonymous to my classmates. But this @16 is an interesting feature, because what this allows me to do is, since I know that the calendar is there, this will let everyone know who sees this post that when they click on @16, they can go directly there, and then they can respond accordingly. So I'm going to post my question anonymously, and you'll see here, are we going to have another guest speaker? I saw something at 16 shows a calendar, blah, blah, blah. Now when I click on this @16, it'll take me directly to the guest speaker calendar. And so if you got that note and you weren't sure what I was referring to, now you can just automatically go there. So we know that students oftentimes, if you see something that's redundant, or if you see something that's a duplicate, you can mark it as a duplicate, or you can point people in the direction of where that information is. Great, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. I'm going to pause and show my face. Hi, everybody. And see if there are any questions. It looks like there's one. How do you get the class at a glance page? Sure. So let me show you that. So your class at a glance page is always going to show up once you click on your Q&A. So my class at a glance, I just click on Q&A, and my class at a glance will show up here. Okay. Other questions that folks might have?
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Myra. I'm here for a conference, so feel free to stop by. We're having I'm not sure who Myra is, but feel free to stop by. I'm pretty easily recognized. I'm also wearing fire red sneakers. Here, let me show you. These guys, they're pretty easy to spot.
Those look like Alabama.
I think it's my Roll Tide shoes. These are my Roll Tide sneakers. I had to represent today.
Tony, we also have 5 states. That are talk about class group to those.
Sure. So there's a couple of ways to sort of get at states. I think one thing that might be interesting for you to do, one thing that I might do is consider a couple of things. The first would be if I were you, Jeff, I might put in some additional tags that would help you sort of identify where people are coming from. And so I might put in an extra tag for the different 5 states. That way when I post, I can basically tag myself as having had a question from a particular state. But if not, then what you might want to do is you might want to go in as an admin, and you would go to your managed class, and you would go down here, and you would go to create groups. And so what I would do is I would create this group, group one, and I would, let's see if I can edit this.
Yeah, Tony, we already have the groups created.
Okay.
I was just from participants' view. How do they come back and use that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. From a participant's view, you already have the groups created. So what I would do, let me just go back into principles, is I'm not sure in which group I'm in, but let's say I had a question for a particular class group. I would do it for either Kentucky or Indiana or Iowa. So let's say I'm interested in Iowa. And I just want this. I'm not in the group, so I have to ask the instructor to enroll me in this group because only people within the group can post to each other. So right now it doesn't look like I'm enrolled in any of these groups, but if you were, then basically you can post to any of these groups once you're enrolled in them. And that discussion would basically, it would stay within that group until a post was made visible to everybody. And anybody within the group can do that. So if you enroll me, I can just post to the group, but I mean, that's where you would do it, right here.
Thank you. I'm not sure we have a lot of other questions coming in here.
Okay.
Go ahead and send some in.
Sure. I think probably the biggest nudge that I would give is really to use the tags diligently. I know that, you know, sort of like in this day and age, everyone's got a tendency to type very quickly and sort of like hit send. But I would strongly encourage you to use the search and to make sure that you're using these folders as accurately as possible. So that is what's going to help you organize all of this content. As you get more and more questions and more notes, it'll just be much easier to navigate if everyone is diligent about making sure that they tag. Great.
Tony, can you talk about how to make embed things in your so if I want to add or I want to mark up the text, could you give a demo of that?
Sure. So here's I'll bring us back to an example that I had, PS 101, and so let's see, Excel. So what I did was I embedded this video. And to embed this video, it's pretty easy. All you would do is go in here to edit, and then what I would do is I would insert a link, or I can insert a file or a video. So I'm going to insert a link, and then you basically just, here's a text to display.
Tony, can you screen share for us?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was screen sharing. Let me go back and screen share. Sorry about that. So here's an example of a note where I embedded some source code. Okay, so then you can just watch this video within the frame. And so to do that, it's very simple. Just go to New Post. I'm going to post a note. This is going to be for, let's say, a project, and then watch this video. And then I'm just going to insert. I want to insert a video. And the best thing to do is to insert the embed code. And what you do for the embed code is just you go to YouTube, find a video. Let's see, last week with John Oliver. And what I want to do is I want to share this. I want to share the embed code. So copy that. Go back to my Piazza, click my embed code, put it in there, OK. Watch this video, post my note. Now I've got this video in my frame, and then students can watch it within here. So that's one thing I would encourage you to do. Is I know you can go to the share, but if you go to the embed code, which YouTube already provides, it makes it watchable within the frame. If you wanted to post a file or a picture, you can insert an image. I would just go here. This isn't my computer, so let me just pick a dodecahedron. insert, and now I've got a picture of this is my dodecahedron. Post my, oh, I gotta select lab 1, geometry rules, post my note. And so now I've got a picture that's embedded in into there. So it really is as easy as when you go to a new post, pick what you want to put a link in there, you want to put a picture in there, you want to put a file in there, go ahead and do that. If you were interested, let's say, in putting in a formula. So let me show you an example here. So here's an example where there's some really nicely rendered formulas here. I would just go in. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with LaTeX, but if you're not, Piazza uses this function where we'd say x. Let me go back here. Let's say x squared minus 2b, and it'll build my expression as I'm typing this out and just clicking on the LaTeX equation editor. And so there's a couple of things that you can do if you want. One would be if your instructor has already put in some of these formulas, you can basically reverse engineer what he's done, or just simply click through. And the first couple of times it may be a little challenging, but you'll get the hang of it. Most of our students, they get it right off the bat because they're used to using stuff like this. So that's how you would embed pictures. Again, use the embed code from YouTube. You can embed files. There's no file size limit. But I mean, obviously, for practical purposes, you'd want to have compressed files if you're going to be sharing lots of stuff. One other thing that I'll show you, because this will be relevant to what you're doing, is, let's see, clear out of here, and I think it's in. Yeah, so this is code blocking. What Piazza will do is when you post, if you decide to use a code block, Piazza will basically highlight the syntax for you for basic languages, commands versus other things, and it'll show up here in a code block. And we know that some students and instructors really like this because it makes the code really easy to see. And so in order for me to do that, I would post, let's say, my own group. Can you check this chunk of code? I would go here. This is where I am getting stuck. And then I would put in a code block, and I would begin to write in here. Blah, 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 blah. So once I do that, then I would post my note, and it would show up in here. Again, I'm not a student of computer science. It's been many years since I've taken C++ and HTML, but you get the idea where within this code block, Piazza will highlight the basic syntaxes that you would need or that you might be working with in class. Great. Should we tag even when we are posting our discussion answers? How do I find a group? Does Piazza have its own video player like Google Drive? So I think those are really great questions. Again, being diligent and sort of building those habits of mind wind up being really helpful for everyone else in the class. So if I go back to our class in CS4HS, and I go here and I say, let's see, I want to post, and the question, that you just asked, those two questions are logistics questions. Yes, it's really important for other students because they may have logistics-related questions, or maybe your questions, does have its own player like Google Drive. Those wind up becoming important questions for other students to want to answer. And so, maybe there's a folder that says media, or maybe in here I just put, hashtag media. So
Tony, sorry, I'm not sure I see your screen.
Oh, you don't see my screen? That's
I
not
see your
good.
icon.
It says I'm sharing my screen. Here, let me try it again. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks. Okay. Yep. So again, here, put it in logistics because you'd have a logistical question. This is media related. And then let's say, like similar to how you might use hashtags elsewhere, or even just putting the words at the bottom, that's helpful because if I did have a question about Google Drive or something like that, when I search, Piazza is going to search your entire post. So you can either filter by the meta tags, which are the professor-provided folders, or if you wind up tagging, because the folder doesn't exist, some of these words at the bottom of your post, they're going to be helpful when somebody else is looking in the Piazza for some question of that nature. Good questions. Great. So again, I know there's a bit of a minute lag, so I'll pause for a second and see if there's any other questions. Again, I think being diligent about tagging, making sure that you use the search first, will help in the long term in terms of organizing the information and making Piazza a really easily navigable tool for you. I was telling Professor Gray that our biggest MOOC was a 15,000 person MOOC at Georgia Tech, which I know is next door, or practically next door, right? And so, you can imagine that in a class of that size, both the instructors, the TAs, and the students had to be really diligent about how they were using Piazza to get the most value out of it, and they had a really good experience.
Okay, I don't know if there's any more questions coming in or not.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, the minute delay.
Do you have any questions, or Professor Gray, do you have any questions?
I think you covered all the ones that I had requested. It was a question about its own video player. Cover that one.
So Piazza does not have its own video player. We've focused exclusively on making this wiki-style interaction really seamless, really easy, so students can communicate with each other and their professors. So we've stayed away from sort of having our own media. What we have done, though, and what I showed is made it really easy to use multimedia within Piazza. And so if you're using Socrative, or if you're using YouTube, or if you're using anything else, or if there are ones that are out there that we're not currently using, or that may not be compatible, let me know. Part of my job is to find out things like ChemDraw and whether or not ChemDraw, is probably irrelevant for you, but for people who are in chemistry, they love to draw chemical structures and they want to be able to twist it. How do we integrate that better? So the field is open. If there are suggestions, feel free to shoot me an email, tony@piazza.com, and I'll bring that to our engineering team. Another question coming up. Carol is from Texas but does not see the Texas group. How can she find that group? So that means one of two things. Either that group doesn't exist because Professor Gray hasn't created it, or there's something wrong with your computer. He's nodding his head, so I don't think he's created the Texas group yet. So he might want to go ahead and do that at some point after the call.
Okay, there's one more question. As a math teacher, I love when we search, we need the hashtag.
When you search, you do not need to include the hashtag. So, for instance, if I look back here, I gotta share my screen again. When you're searching, you don't need to put the hashtag. Piazza will know that you're searching, right? And so if I go back to my old class, my PZ 101, and I look for Q is less than, it's gonna find Q&A. Q is less than, or if I find $$. Yeah, so that actually, to look for a particular equation, I don't think that, because unless you can code in the search, it may not find it. But that actually that's a really good thing to bring to my attention. Let me just try something here. Okay, let me cancel. Get out of this and go to Q&A. Okay, so yeah, so if you put in just the tech, it'll highlight the post where it is. but you wouldn't be able to just type in Q sub K here. You'd actually have to type in the tech in order for Piazza to find it, because we use tech to render it. That's a great question.
Okay, I don't. Any other questions coming in? I don't know, Tony, do you have any final last words or suggestions moving forward?
So I guess the final word that I would say is thank you. Honestly, this is I love what I do. I believe in what we're doing here, and really trying to help students in their educational experience. So thank you for using us. And we live and die based on these relationships and based on the feedback that we get from our users. And so if whatever the experience, good, bad, the ugly, let us know. It's really, really helpful. And so please feel free to email either Tony@Piazza or team@piazza.com with your suggestions, complaints, bugs, whatever it is. This is how we learn, and this is how we've operated over the last 5 years, is to try and be as responsive as we possibly can, as quickly as possible. So thank you, and yeah, definitely, we love the feedback.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Tony. And for everybody else who's out listening and out on Piazza, on YouTube, we'll follow up over the weekend or next week. We have a few more lessons coming out, so be sure to check that. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Roll Tide.